way to animate out, just for this purposes. Spline, we're going to make a circle. Align it with the XZ axis. And then increase the radius. If we go down here to our top view, increase the radius until it gets outside the CG Toots logo. So 450? Yeah, 450 looks good. Alright, and then duplicate that. Go into cylinder. We're going to make, cylinder. We're going to make another circle, and we're going to take this down to, let's say, 15. That's our radius. Now we load up a sweep nerb, and then we're going to copy our little circle and our big circle, and I never get it right in the first time except for now. Alright. We're going to call this hoop. Now we're going to take this circle, which is the same radius and diameter and circumference as our big hoopy thing here, and we're going to apply an extrude nurb to that. And we're going to bring the extrude nurb down. We're going to bring the depth down to 1. Just a flat disk. Now we're going to bring in our null object, and we're going to copy both of these in here. We're going to rename the extrude nurb object matte, M-A-T-T-E, and then we're going to parent this null object to another null object. And this is going to be, we're going to call this hoop position, and then down we're going to call it hoop rotation. Now, the reason why we want to do it that way is now I can rotate this in any direction I want, and I can move it independent of that rotation. So I have much more, I have a whole lot more animation ability and potential now with this. And because I'm not animating these objects, I can twist and manipulate them. I can tweak them to get the animation property I want while not messing with the actual rotation. It's a MoGraph trick, and I highly suggest you use it whenever you can. So we have our hoop position, hoop rotation, and then our actual hoop. We're going to texture the hoop. We're going to make another Danelle shader. Only we're going to make this one blue. It's going to look awful, but it doesn't matter. Just a light blue, because I just want this to be, and we're going to change the specular. We're going to make this like a very light sky blue. There. It's going to look awful, but I don't care. There. God, it looks awful. Okay, so we have our hoop position and everything, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the matte, and we're going to set up our hoop, but we're going to animate it later. So we're going to go and double-click the dots here, and banish it from our scene, and drag it down here. All right, another trick we're going to do is null object. We're going to double-click that, call it enviro. Wow, my spelling is awful today. Enviro. There we go. And we're going to drag our lights and our sky into this. So now we have everything's nice and cozy and very, very organized, which is very, very important. All right, now we're going to mess with depth of field. If you've ever done depth of field in a 3D program, it's different than in After Effects. It's much more realistic. But the problem is that if you render depth of field along with your RGB image, your image render, any tweaks you make, you're going to have to re-render the entire scene, and that can take forever, especially when you have a very complex scene and involving many pieces and parts, and especially if it's an animation that runs long, like 8, 10, 15, even 20 seconds. If you do the depth of field inside this, you'll run into days. Any minor setback will take you days to fix. So in our camera options, we're going to go down here to depth, and we're just going to turn on our front blur and our rear blur. And I don't know if this is going to show up with the compression later, but when you do this, these boxes show up in 3D space. This is going to be our back blur, and, oh no, that's our front blur. That's our rear blur. And there's another box inside here. That is our front blur. And this is where our front blur is enacted, and then the target object is what we're going to use. If you turn this off, it uses whatever you decide to use as the target distance, which is this value here, and you can see the big green box moves depending on where your target distance is. I don't want to do that. I want to use the object. I want to use my target object. I want to use my camera target for that, because I'm going to do it for compositing later, and you'll see later on. You'll see later on why we want to do it that way. So I have here, so right here at the target object, this will show up crystal clear. And then it'll start to blur as we move out. So I want to bring, yeah, that looks pretty good, to about the second cylinder, or somewhere in between. This is just a proof of concept is all this is. Go to our render. We're going to change our render settings. Right now we have depth of field done, but we haven't told Cinema 4D to start computing it. Change your preset, your output preset to NTSC widescreen square pixel. Yeah, that'll look good. I work in HD all the time, so I'm not happy with 4:3. 16:9 is where it's at. Go down here to Effect. If this is in Cinema 4D 11, in Cinema 4D 10 and 10.5, where is it? It's an option. It's an option under, I think it's a drop down for effects, and then there's it's like down here. It's like a little window that you then, with an arrow like this, and you click to it, and then you go to Effect. I would look it up. I'm not entirely sure how to use it because I haven't used it in a few months. So Effect, down here there's a whole bunch of different options that we can apply to this. Ambient occlusion, caustic, cell renderer, object glow, lens effects, scene motion blur, all this kind of stuff. But the one that we're really looking forward to is depth of field. Here's our depth of field. Here's all the different options that it entails. Don't mess with any of these because we're not even going to use it, just for preview. Just bump this blur strength up to like 25 because I want you to see what's going on here. So we have our scene, and we render, and then it's going to compute our depth of field. You can see how long this is taking. I mean, this is an eternity. I mean, I could be doing a bunch of different stuff, and this is one preview frame this big. And you can see there's our blur, and even then, it's kind of blurred everything. I mean, I'm not a fan of it. I don't really like it all that much. So let's tweak this a little bit more. Let's see how it looks down here. I mean, that's a little bit better. Let's bring it, tuck it in a little bit. Yeah, let's move our camera. Let's set it like that. And then we'll bring this forward a little bit. So you just get it to where you're happy. That looks pretty good. If you wanted to copy the depth, I'm setting the end to 530, or the front to 530, and then the rear to 510. That's the end values for those. So that'll give you an idea of what to do with that. So yeah, that looks okay. But I don't want to render that blur. I want to render something that will allow me to manipulate that blur. So I'm going to turn off depth of field, and I'm going to go down here to this tab called Multipass. In 10.5, it's a tab, I believe, just like this. I think it's under Save. I'm not entirely sure. Under Multipass, you click it, and in one render through Cinema 4D, we can get all of these options. So in the time it takes to do one render, Cinema 4D will spit out all of these different things, because these are all the things it's computing, and we can dice that up and take out just the specular, the reflection, the RGBA image, and the depth. And then we can take all those and composite them later and do some really cool effects with them. What we're going to mess with here today is we need the RGBA image, and we need the depth image. We need the depth layer. Go into Multipass, we're going to click it, and now we're doing a Multipass render. We should get 2 images on the back end of this sucker. We're going to change this to a Targa, and we're going to save it under our 3D. We're going to make a folder called Results. And we're going to call this Multipass. Now, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to call this, well, actually, you know what? Let's not call it that. Yeah, let's call it Multipass. And then we're going to call this CG Toots plus logo. So, alpha channel, straight alpha. And then it also, I think if I click this off, it should still work. Yeah. So I want my alpha channel and my straight alpha included in this. I don't want a separate alpha channel. I got my RGBA image, and I have my depth render. My output, I just want this one image, just so I can show you guys what's going on, and then we'll do a quick animation in a little bit. But yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's hit save, close this out. Make sure that we're rendering the right scene. Use as render view. This is the one I want. And then hit render, render to picture viewer, Boom, that's it. And as you can see, it took no extra time, and everything is completely good. I have the jaggeds that show that my alpha channel is straight inside that image. All right, zip over to After Effects. I'm going to load up my results, multipass. Here are my two images. I have an RGBA and a depth. Load this up, straight, unmatted. There we go. I'm going to copy my RGBA image down here. As you can see, I got the alpha channel in the background, so I'm going to close that so I can see it's just black. Now I have my depth render. A depth render is basically that. It's, well, this is really going to be blurred. You know what? Let me go back and tweak it so that way some of this stuff actually shows up in the background. Just for proof of concept. All right, let's do that. Re-render. Yes. All right, let's see how that looks now. That's better. Okay. So as you can see, CG Toots is completely black. White background, and then we have these gradients of gray, depending on what we're going to do. If you ever mess with an alpha channel, I can actually show you this real quick. If you ever wondered, oh good, we can save our file. After Effects, CG Toots plus logo. If you've ever wondered how all these channels are computed in a program, basically what it is you have different channels that are affected. Oh, actually black solid's a bad color. Don't bother recreating this. This is just to show you what I'm talking about, so you'll understand what's going on here. If you ever wondered how these channels work, basically you have three color channels. Let's say we're working entirely in RGB. You have three color channels: red, green, blue, and red, green, and blue. And the computer assigns a grayscale to each of those. So if we get on here, we can hit red. See, now we have white. Wherever white is, think of it this way: white is what you see. So we're going to see a lot of red, and then it's going to gradiate out where we're not going to see any red. If we go to green, you can see only a little bit of green. I don't even know if this is going to show up in the compression, but you can see just a little bit of green. And if we go down to blue, I don't think anything's going to show up. No, about the same. So just a little bit of blue, and it's going to gradiate out. Once again, if you go to alpha channel, it's the same way. White is what you see. So white is completely opaque, black is completely transparent, and then this gradient scale is what goes on in between. Now this method of doing things is exactly the same as what we did with our depth render. All we did, oh wait, I'm still on the alpha channel, my bad. There we go. All we did was we told Cinema 4D basically where something would be opaque, color it black. Then the more blurred it gets, make it gray, or the more blurred it gets, make it white to where it'll be completely blurred. So now you can see we have gray, white, and then black. So the way we use this technique is we go to Layer, we make an adjustment layer. And then we're going to tuck our adjustment layer underneath our depth map. Then we go into Effect on the adjustment layer, Blur and Sharpen down here to Lens Blur. There are a ton of different effects that accomplish this exact thing using a depth map to make a blur. I mean, this will work. You know, I mean, we're not looking for something spectacular. We're not looking for something super realistic. Man, I better shut off mail. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to close it down. It's just Amazon. Let me know that there's new stuff for the Kindle. There we go. All right, so what we need to do is we need to assign our depth mapped layer. So if we click on here, CG Toots plus logo underscore depth.tga. That's the one we want to use. We click on that. We're going to use the luminance for it. There's red, green, blue, and alpha. We want to use the luminance because it's going to use what we see here, which is the grayscale values that we've given. If we load up, show our logo right here, we'll turn off the depth layer, and there's our depth of field right there. Completely, and it's going to look perfect no matter what you do. And the best part is, if you want to change it, if you want to do, blur it more, let's blur it to hell. Yeah, 55. That's good. Give it a second to chug through. There. Now you can see our background is blurred like crazy. Another thing you have to look out for is this haloing effect around here, but that's an advanced thing that if you do this a lot, I'll show you how to mess with that later. But as you can see, if we keep it, somewhat reasonable, like 15, it looks great. And there's our depth of field, and it will render exactly like that. And we can change it. I mean, we can add a noise to it, like a noise amount, to make it more realistic. you know, like a little gradient noise in the background. We can change the shape of the iris that figures out what, or the shape of the iris that figures out what's going on here. One option that we do want to select is repeat edge pixels. If you've never messed with a blur before in After Effects, we'll take our red solid here, and I'm going to apply a fast blur to it. If you ever blur something in After Effects, what it does is it feathers the edges because it's blurring the entire thing, so it's blurring the edges too. If you don't want that, if you just want the inside blurred but you want the edges to go all the way to the end, you have to click repeat edge pixels. And then what it does is it just basically computes out to show, just to keep the hard edge, but it still blurs everything inside. So with this, we won't get a softness. I don't even know if you're going to be able to tell. Yeah, it's a little bit there. It's probably not going to show up in the compression, but the more you, the more you mess with it, the more you'll see. You want to click repeat edge pixels. Alright, so now we have this basic thing set up here. We have our CG Toots logo completely unblurred. It looks fantastic. And then we have our background that's blurred. Oh, really? Alright, I'm just going to leave them alone. Now what we want to do is we want to set up a quick animation. We're going to put in a matte object, and well, first we're going to animate the camera. So let's line up the camera with our X and Y, so that way it's facing dead on towards the logo. Let's tilt it up. You know what? Let's tilt it up a little bit, give it some dynamicism. And then we're going to put that at frame 30, and we're just going to keyframe. If you've never done this before, down here by the keyframe, there's position, scale, and rotation. These little options down here, oop, I gotta remember to go slow. Sorry guys. These little options down here tell Cinema 4D what to keyframe. So we have our position, our scale, and our rotation. We're only going to mess with position and rotation throughout the entire thing, so I'm just going to turn off the scale. So that way I don't have in the timeline all these extra keyframes cluttering it up. So I'm going to keyframe 30, then I'm going to go to 0, then I'm going to bring the camera up, and I'm going to tilt it a bit, bring it up like this, and yeah, let's rotate it. Yeah, do something kind of crazy. And then when we bring it down, there. Then we're just going to leave it just like that. In fact, let's back it up a little bit. There, keep it within title safe. Yeah, that's some fantastic camera motion right there. Anyway, so just a real simple camera move. And then once we have that set up, let's go to frame 25, right before our camera. Well, you know what? Let's go to frame 20, right before our 25, before our camera finishes. Let's open up our hoop here, and let's rotate our hoop towards canted and tilted back and away. And then we're going to move our position for the hoop back a bit behind the CG Toots logo. Yeah, right about there is pretty good. Alright, now you go into Hoop, go down here to End Growth, right click on it. Actually, let's go to 40. Right click on it, Animation, Add Keyframe. We're going to add a keyframe on the End Growth. Then we're going to go to 20, change this to 0, right click on it, Animation, Add Keyframe. Anything in Cinema 4D with this little dot right here, this little empty circle, next to anything can be keyframed. You just have to right click, animation, add keyframe. Fortunately, that's how it works. There's no other. The other way to do it is to go in here and then keyframe everything, and you can see all these things turn white. Anytime you mess with one of these, it's going to make a keyframe. Yeah, that's going to get really messy really quick. I don't like using that at all. So we have our keyframe right here at 0, and then as it animates, it'll actually complete the hoop. As you can see, the hoop's going to fly right on like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our hoop like this. Oh, no, I want to mess with hoop rotation. Hoop like this. We're going to keyframe just the rotation. We'll keyframe both, so we're not messing back and forth. And we'll go to 40. And what we're going to do is we're going to swing this around twice. We're going to swing it, we're going to swing it once past the camera and make it face it like that. And tilt it forward a bit. So we have it animate on,